Closer Than We Think was a weekly comic strip that appeared in the Sunday edition of newspapers across the United States from 1958 to 1963. It was created by Arthur Radabaugh, who at the time was an industrial designer for the automotive industry. Radabaugh's predictions ranged from glass-domed cities with moving sidewalks and flying cars to undersea hotels and warehouse storage in space. And while flying cars and personal helicopters are still somewhere in the future, it's surprising to see how many of these predictions did come true. Join me as we take a fun look back to see how the world envisioned by Closer Than We Think actually compares with the way we live in 2024. At a time when even high-end TV sets didn't get bigger than 21 inches, Closer Than We Think accurately anticipated where the future of home entertainment might take us. In a strip from March 1958, we read about giant-sized color TV screens that would be picture-thin and lit with electroluminescent crystals rather than the tube TVs of the day. 3 years later, in 1961, the comic strip explained how TV signals from around the world would be sent and received using beam-bouncing satellites placed in evenly spaced orbits around the globe. In this drawing, we see a flat-screen TV covering the width of an entire wall as the family at home enjoys watching a life-size bullfight, presumably live from Spain. Another pair of accurate predictions made by Closer Than We Think also dealt with how we might be spending our leisure time in the future. At a time when many Americans were still pushing around old-fashioned open-blade grass cutters, Closer Than We Think described the introduction of solar-powered self-driving lawn mowing machines that would sit silently soaking in the sunlight and automatically jump into autonomous action when the electric eye recognized that the lawn had grown to cutting height. In this comic from June of 1959, our homeowner lounges leisurely in a hammock reading the newspaper while his confused terrier risks losing a couple of paws in a head-to-head battle with the whirling blades of the alien machine. Perhaps instead of lounging around and witnessing the gruesome disfigurement of his four-legged friend, our homeowner could have been enjoying a relaxing round of golf made even more leisurely by another indispensable tool of the future, the remote-controlled golf cart. Designed to operate as a hovercraft riding on a cushion of air, the fairways of the future would be spared of flattening by the old-fashioned wheels of the past. Apparently, this obedient machine would not only be willing to haul around a golf bag for 18 holes, but its hovercraft fan would flirtatiously blow up the skirts of all the pretty young ladies on the course, thus allowing its creepy human master to grip his putter and leer safely from a distance. As predicted, both of these labor-saving inventions have since come on the market. While not strictly solar-powered, today's automatic mower is capable of charting its own path, staying within boundaries, and maintaining straight lines. The self-driving golf cart of today can be steered remotely or simply set to follow mode. As the current version is still propelled by old-fashioned wheels, the unique side benefits provided by the hovercraft fan are not included. Now, here's one I hadn't realized had evolved as far as it has: the turnpike truck train. This is a way to haul large loads over long distances by joining several trailers together, each with its own engine. These trailer engines could be linked together for long hauls and then eventually separated and sent to various destinations. These trucks would also have these odd inflatable spoilers on the front and back ends to reduce wind drag and improve gas mileage. Now, certainly while driving around the country, I've seen double trailers and in certain states even triple trailers. But in Sweden, they've really expanded on the concept and stretched it to its limit. This truck is pulling a whopping 10 shipping containers over 5 trailer sections. While this vehicle is mainly used for hauling around the port and has limited permits for local roads, truck trains with 4+ trailers are common for long-haul routes in the Australian outback. This fuel delivery truck is hauling 4 separate sections, a length of 175 feet, on an 870-mile round-trip journey around Western Australia. Wow. Of course, any long road trips would certainly be aided by a vehicle that could drive itself, which was another prediction made in a Closer Than We Think comic of October 1961. The imagined concept was that electronic guidance strips would be embedded in the roadway and would provide electric impulses to the cars driving over it that would regulate speed, braking, and obstacle detection through a control box on each car. Notice the handy Autopilot kit mounted on the front of the car. In the text of the comic, it's suggested that major highway robot systems could be in use as early as 1975. Although the technology of today is different, cars with Autopilot have been in testing since the 1990s and were introduced to the public by Tesla in 2014. Instead of navigating by electronic signals embedded into the roadways, they're using satellite navigation combined with onboard sensors and machine learning to create an understanding of the immediate driving environment. Multiple car companies have now gotten in on the trend, and fully driverless taxis have already taken to the streets of San Francisco, Austin, and Phoenix. Although lacking the funny-looking feelers on the imagined Autopilot kit, these vehicles still do have some unusual equipment mounted on board. Speaking of computer-based navigation, a strip in September 1961 made the prediction of computer navigation for air travel. We learned that, in the future, planes in the air would collect radar-derived information from stations on the ground. This information would be fed into a computer box located in the plane's cockpit. Then a sinister-looking radar analyzer machine would interpret the data and direct the plane towards its destination. Based on the drawing, it looks like this new system would do away with pilots altogether, leaving the cockpit to be manned primarily by the computer system and simply overseen by a monitor officer. Apparently, this autopilot system would be so reliable that the monitor officer could turn his back to the cockpit and flirt congenially with the pretty ladies in the front of the cabin, even on takeoff and landing. Of course, not all of the predictions made in Closer Than We Think have come to pass, quite thankfully in many cases. For instance, in October 1958, we're introduced to the atomic automobile. The strip explains how the Ford Motor Company had recently designed a device called the Nucleon. This bowling ball-sized contraption would contain an atomic power capsule with a radioactive core, which would allow the vehicle to travel 5,000 miles or more without recharging. Certainly, if Ford Motors had actually implemented this invention, their problems with the Ford Pinto may have been on a much larger scale. Here's another prediction that hasn't yet come to pass: the zipper bag airplane. In October of 1958, we learn of inflatable airplanes that can be rolled up and stowed away in your basement or garage between uses. In fact, tests of such flying machines had supposedly already been successfully conducted. Apparently, you would simply yank the balled-up roll of rubber out of the back of your Chevy Nomad, perhaps with a little assistance from your uniformed driver, unfurl it on the ground, get to work with your hand pump for a few minutes, and voila, you're ready to take to the skies in your own personal aircraft. Of course, you'll still need to mount the motor and propeller, landing gears, steering controls, etc., but soon enough you'll be up among the clouds. And here's one of the crazier predictions: the time machine camera. In this comic from May 1959, we can see by the stars and lit street lamp that it's now nighttime. One police officer is standing at the scene of the crime, where he has the heat detection antenna set up. A second police officer looks at the scene through the viewfinder of his time machine camera. We assume he has the red dial on top set to earlier this afternoon when the crime occurred. Although a shooting is clearly visible in the viewfinder, the officer's gaze is apparently drawn to an attractive young woman in a red hat and coat. Although she's no longer on the scene, he can see her image clearly thanks to the time machine camera. Officer Peeping Tom's brain is suddenly flooded with all of the other places where he might put this incredible piece of technology to work: bathtubs, shower stalls, locker rooms, bathtubs. Fortunately, his partner brings him back to the task at hand, and looking back beyond the lovely red hat lady, our officer can now see exactly who the culprit was: a man wearing a gray suit and hat, just like 10 other witnesses had already described. Now, while cameras that can see into the past by translating heat rays into photographs will likely never exist, if you would like to have the amazing experience of watching a modern scene turn into an image from the past, I invite you to click on this Then and Now video, which shows pairs of photos from identical locations taken from the same perspective, but decades apart in time. It's almost magical to watch these scenes change right before your eyes.